In her inherited Victorian mansion, a successful executive was about to make the most devastating decision of her life. What started as adopting 6 foster children took a shocking turn when she encountered master manipulators disguised as vulnerable innocents. Julia Johnson wasn't your typical adoptive parent. For 15 years, she had built a marketing empire, known for spotting deception instantly. When she met these children presenting perfect victim personas, she had no idea she was walking into psychological warfare. Julia's maternal instincts would lead to systematic destruction of everything she'd built through years of calculated manipulation and gaslighting. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 11 times, its resonant toll echoing through rooms that had known laughter once. Julia Johnson stood motionless in the center of her grandmother's parlor, still clutching the keys the estate attorney had pressed into her palm an hour earlier. The Victorian mansion stretched around her like a living memory, all gabled windows and dark mahogany, crystal chandeliers casting fractured rainbows across Persian rugs. "Grandmother always said this house was meant for children," she whispered to the silence. At 42, Julia had built Johnson Marketing Solutions into a 7-figure empire, but success felt hollow in these rooms, where Eleanor had once hosted Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations that Julia treasured as a lonely only child. She moved through the mansion like a ghost revisiting her past. The kitchen still smelled faintly of vanilla and cinnamon, remnants of the woman who had been the only constant source of love in Julia's childhood. Her fingers traced the worn wooden table, where she'd learned to bake cookies, where grandmother Eleanor had listened to her fears and dreams with patient attention her parents never provided. The reading of the will echoed in her mind. Eleanor's voice, preserved in video. "You were always meant for more than success, darling. This house has been empty too long. Fill it with the laughter it remembers." $2.7 million. The mansion appraised at another $1.5 million. Enough to change everything. Enough to finally build the family she'd dreamed of since childhood. When she'd pressed her face against her bedroom window and watched the Martinez family next door gathering for barbecues, their backyard alive with children and the belongings she'd never known. Her phone buzzed. Michael's third call since the reading. Her brother's name flashed on the screen, but she let it go to voicemail. Michael had made his choice when their parents died, taking his inheritance and disappearing into his law practice, building walls instead of bridges. Julia climbed the curved staircase. The second floor held 6 bedrooms, each one a possibility waiting to be filled. She pushed open the corner room, imagining morning light flooding through east-facing windows, a desk positioned where a child might do homework while she cooked dinner. The room beside it could house bunk beds, maybe twins who'd never been separated. In Eleanor's old sewing room, she discovered a wooden chest filled with letters. The top one was addressed to her. "My dearest Julia, if you're reading this, you've inherited a chance to heal the loneliness that has haunted our family. This house remembers joy, but it needs new memories. Don't let fear keep you from the family you've always wanted. The children who need you most are the ones who will teach you what love really means." Tears she'd held back since the funeral finally came. Eleanor had always seen through her professional facade to the child who'd spent Christmas mornings alone while her parents attended essential business functions. By evening, Julia had researched adoption agencies. Her laptop glowed in Eleanor's study, surrounded by books on child psychology she'd ordered overnight. The statistics were daunting. Older children with histories of trauma presented challenges that overwhelmed even experienced parents. But Julia saw opportunity where others saw risk. Harbor Light Children's Services emphasized finding homes for children who'd aged out of traditional adoption prospects. Julia filled out the preliminary application at midnight, checking boxes that would change everything. Dr. Amanda Walsh called at 7 the next morning, her voice carrying measured professionalism. "Ms. Johnson, we received your application. 6 children is quite ambitious for a first-time adoptive parent. Are you certain you understand what you're taking on?" Julia stood in Eleanor's kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows overlooking a backyard garden wild with neglect. She could envision it restored, a swing set beneath the old oak tree, vegetable plots where children could learn to nurture growing things. I understand these children have been hurt, Julia replied. I understand they might not trust easily, but I also understand what it feels like to grow up without enough love. I have the resources to provide stability, and more importantly, the time to provide attention. Dr. Walsh's pause stretched uncomfortably. Most people want babies, Ms. Johnson. Older children come with histories, trauma responses, behavioral challenges that can be difficult to navigate. Most people haven't spent their childhood wishing they belonged somewhere, Julia answered. I'm not looking for easy, Dr. Walsh. I'm looking for family. 3 weeks later, Julia sat across from Dr. Walsh in a conference room as the social worker reviewed her background check, financial records, and psychological evaluation. The mansion had been inspected and deemed suitable. Your application has been approved, Dr. Walsh announced, though her expression remained cautious. We have 6 children who might benefit from a placement like yours. However, these aren't children who've learned to trust adults. They've learned to survive in a system that has repeatedly failed them. Julia leaned forward, heart racing. Tell me about them. Individual meetings first, then group sessions. This process can't be rushed. These children will test every boundary, challenge every kindness. Are you prepared? Julia would remember this moment as the last time she felt purely hopeful. In her mind, she was already planning bedrooms and birthday parties, imagining homework sessions at Eleanor's kitchen table and bedtime stories by firelight. I'm prepared to love them, she said simply. Dr. Walsh made a note, her expression suggesting she'd heard similar words from parents who'd later begged for removal. Love isn't always enough, Ms. Johnson. Sometimes it's not even recognized as love by children who've learned that adult affection comes with a price. Then I'll prove them wrong, Julia replied. The paperwork was extensive. Medical histories, educational records, psychological evaluations, painting pictures of childhood stolen by addiction, abuse, and abandonment. Julia read each file with growing determination, seeing past clinical language to children who'd learned to build walls higher than most adults imagined. Driving home through Maplewood Heights' tree-lined streets, past houses glowing with warm light and sounds of family dinners, Julia felt Christmas Eve anticipation. Soon, her house would glow with that same warmth. The mansion welcomed her back with its familiar embrace of shadows and memories. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt expectant, ready to write new chapters in its long history of sheltering those who needed sanctuary. Tomorrow, she would meet the children who would transform this monument to loneliness into something beautiful and alive. She had no way of knowing that some children learn to weaponize the very love that should heal them. Marcus's hand remained steady as he shook Julia's, his grip firm but not aggressive. The handshake of someone who understood the importance of first impressions. At 16, he carried himself with a maturity that made Julia's heart ache for the childhood he'd clearly been forced to abandon too early. Thank you for considering us, Ms. Johnson, he said, his dark eyes meeting hers with startling directness. I know 6 kids seems like a lot, but we look out for each other. We always have. Dr. Walsh observed from her corner chair as Julia settled across from Marcus in the agency's sterile meeting room. The boy's file painted a picture of resilience born from tragedy, 8 years in foster care after his mother's overdose, 3 failed placements, but consistently high grades and glowing reports from teachers who saw potential beneath the protective walls he'd built. Tell me about the others, Julia said, leaning forward with genuine interest. Dr. Walsh mentioned you helped take care of the younger ones. Marcus's expression softened with what appeared to be authentic affection. Luna's been through a lot. She lost her mom when she was 7, cancer, and her dad wasn't in the picture. She's artistic, really talented, but she gets scared sometimes. The twins, Kai and Phoenix, they came to us 2 years ago. Their mom was just a kid herself when she had them. They're good kids, just need someone who won't give up on them. Julia found herself nodding, already imagining art supplies scattered across Eleanor's sunroom, twins building forts in the mansion's sprawling rooms. And the other 2? River's brilliant with computers. Taught himself programming when he was 9. His parents. Marcus paused, and Julia caught a flicker of something harder in his eyes before the compassion returned. They weren't equipped to handle a kid like him. And Zara, she's the baby. 10 years old and still believes in fairy tale endings. After everything she's seen, she still thinks families can be forever. The way he said it, protective, almost fierce, made Julia's decision feel inevitable. These children needed someone who wouldn't abandon them, someone who understood that love meant staying even when things got difficult. "I'd like to meet them," Julia said. Dr. Walsh arranged individual sessions over the following week. Luna came first, clutching a worn sketchbook against her chest like armor. At 14, she had the ethereal beauty of someone who'd learned to make herself seem fragile, translucent skin and enormous gray eyes that seemed to hold depths of sorrow. "Marcus said you have a big house," Luna whispered, settling into her chair like a bird ready to take flight. "I don't take up much space. I'm good at being quiet." Julia's heart twisted. "Honey, I don't want you to be quiet. I want you to feel safe enough to make noise." Luna's eyes filled with tears so quickly Julia wondered if she'd said something wrong. "My mom used to say that. Before she got sick. She said our house was too quiet, that it needed more laughter." The tears spilled over, and Luna's voice broke. "I miss her so much. Sometimes I dream she's still here, and when I wake up..." "Tell me about her," Julia said gently, offering tissues that Luna accepted with trembling hands. For the next hour, Luna painted a picture of a mother who'd fought cancer with grace, who'd spent her final months teaching her daughter to see beauty in small things, who'd made Luna promise to keep drawing even when the world felt dark. Julia listened with growing admiration for this girl who'd channeled grief into art, whose sketchbook revealed talent that took her breath away. "These are incredible," Julia murmured, studying a charcoal drawing of hands holding a dying flower. "Would you like a proper art studio? With good lighting and space to spread out?" Luna's transformation was instantaneous, tears stopping as if controlled by a switch, eyes brightening with what looked like calculated hope. "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Of course," Julia replied, missing the fleeting smile that crossed Luna's face when she thought no one was looking. The twins came together. As Dr. Walsh explained, they always did. Kai and Phoenix Thompson sat side by side, identical in feature but opposite in energy. Kai observed everything with sharp intelligence, while Phoenix fidgeted constantly, his attention darting around the room like a caged animal. "We don't get separated," Phoenix announced immediately, his chin jutting out with defensive determination. "That's our rule. Anyone who tries to split us up doesn't get to keep us." "I wouldn't dream of separating you," Julia assured them. "I have plenty of room for both of you." Kai leaned forward slightly, studying her with unsettling intensity for a 12-year-old. "What kind of room? Are there locks on the doors? Security cameras? Do you have neighbors close by?" The questions seemed oddly specific, but Julia attributed them to children who'd learned to assess their environment for safety. "The bedrooms have locks, if that makes you feel more secure. No cameras. I believe children deserve privacy. And yes, we have good neighbors. The Hendersons next door have grandchildren who visit often." She watched Kai file away each answer with the methodical precision of someone taking inventory. Phoenix, meanwhile, had discovered a stress ball on Dr. Walsh's desk and was squeezing it with enough force to make his knuckles white. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Phoenix has a lot of energy," Kai explained with the patience of someone used to making excuses. "He needs space to run around. And stuff to do with his hands." "The backyard is enormous," Julia said. "And there's a workshop in the basement that hasn't been used in years. Maybe Phoenix would like to learn woodworking? My grandfather built beautiful things." Phoenix's fidgeting stopped. "Could I really? Build stuff?" For a moment, his mask slipped, revealing a child who desperately wanted to create rather than destroy. Julia made a mental note to clear out the workshop. to fill it with tools and projects that might channel whatever drove his restless energy. River Santos arrived precisely on time, his 11-year-old frame slight but his eyes ancient with knowledge no child should possess. He carried a tablet and moved with the careful economy of someone who'd learned to make himself small and unnoticed. "Dr. Walsh says you work in marketing," he said without preamble, settling into his chair and immediately assessing the room's technology. The computer, the phone system, the security keypad by the door. "Digital marketing?" "Among other things," Julia replied, intrigued by his directness. "Are you interested in technology?" "I like understanding how things work. Systems. Networks. The way information moves from one place to another." His fingers moved across his tablet screen with practiced efficiency. "Most adults don't really understand what they're using. They think privacy settings mean privacy, but everything leaves digital footprints." Julia found his sophistication both impressive and slightly unsettling. "That's quite advanced thinking for someone your age." River's smile was sharp-edged, knowing. "Age is just a number. Experience is what matters. I've had a lot of experience with systems that don't work the way they're supposed to." When she asked about school, his grades, his interests, River answered with clinical precision, while his eyes continued cataloging everything in the room. Julia sensed intelligence being carefully measured and deployed, but attributed it to a brilliant child protecting himself in an adult world that had repeatedly failed him. Finally, Zara Mitchell arrived, and Julia's professional composure nearly cracked entirely. At 10, she was small for her age, with enormous dark eyes and an explosion of curly hair that seemed to have a life of its own. She clutched a worn stuffed rabbit and approached Julia with the cautious hope of someone who'd learned that adults could disappear without warning. "Are you really going to adopt all of us?" Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus says you might, but sometimes grown-ups change their minds." "I don't change my mind easily," Julia said, crouching to Zara's eye level. "Tell me about your rabbit." "His name is Mr. Hopscotch. My dad gave him to me before." She trailed off, hugging the rabbit tighter. "Before he had to go away. Marcus says maybe Dad will come back someday, but I think Mr. Hopscotch is enough family for now." Julia spent the remainder of their session listening to Zara's chatter about school, her friends, the stories she made up about Mr. Hopscotch's adventures. The child's sweetness felt genuine in a way that made Julia's maternal instincts surge protectively. Here was innocence that still believed in happy endings, trust that hadn't been completely shattered. "Would you like to see my house?" Julia asked as their time ended. "There's a tower room with windows all around. I thought it might make a perfect princess bedroom." Zara's face lit up like Christmas morning. "A real tower? Like in fairy tales?" "Just like in fairy tales," Julia promised, already planning how she'd transform the space into something magical. As the week of meetings concluded, Julia felt the same certainty that had driven her most successful business decisions. These children needed her, and she needed them. The mansion would finally fulfill its purpose, become the home Eleanor had always envisioned. Dr. Walsh scheduled the final group meeting for the following Monday, when all 6 children would visit the house together. Julia drove home through Maplewood Heights' leafy streets, her mind racing with plans for bedrooms and family dinners, homework help, and birthday celebrations. She had no way of knowing that in a group home across town, 6 children were conducting their own meeting, comparing notes on her vulnerabilities, and finalizing the strategies that would make her the perfect mark for the most sophisticated con of their young lives. The moving van pulled away from the Victorian mansion on a crisp October morning, leaving Julia standing on her front porch with 6 children and enough luggage to outfit a small army. The moment felt surreal. After months of paperwork, interviews, and sleepless nights, her dream of family was finally becoming reality. "Welcome home," she said, her voice catching slightly on the word home. For the first time in years, it felt true. Marcus stepped forward first, as he always did, shouldering 2 duffel bags with practiced efficiency. "It's beautiful, Ms. Johnson. Thank you for giving us this chance." Julia had spent weeks preparing for this day. Each bedroom had been carefully decorated based on what she'd learned about the children's personalities. Marcus's room featured a desk positioned to catch morning light, shelves for the books he devoured, and a bulletin board where he could organize his meticulous notes. Luna's space had been transformed into an artist's sanctuary, with an easel by the window, supplies organized in vintage glass jars, and soft lighting that would make her delicate features glow. The twins' room buzzed with energy. Bunk beds positioned so they could whisper to each other, a reading nook for Kai's quiet moments, and a punching bag hung from the ceiling beam for Phoenix's restless energy. River's room hummed with technology, complete with a computer setup that had cost more than most people's cars. And Zara's tower room looked like something from a fairy tale, all gauzy curtains and twinkling lights. "Can I really sleep here every night?" Zara whispered, spinning in the center of her new bedroom while Mr. Hopscotch flew through the air in her arms. "Every single night," Julia promised, watching the child's face light up with wonder that seemed too pure to be performance. The first weeks unfolded like scenes from the family portraits Julia had imagined. Mornings began with pancakes at Eleanor's old kitchen table, the children taking turns choosing flavors while Julia learned their preferences. Marcus liked his plain with just a touch of syrup. Luna preferred hers with fresh berries arranged in perfect patterns. The twins shared everything, even their pancakes, cutting them into precise halves. River ate mechanically while studying his tablet, and Zara insisted on making faces with chocolate chips. Julia enrolled them in Maplewood Heights Elementary and the prestigious private middle school where her donations had secured immediate admission. She watched with pride as Marcus charmed teachers with his maturity, as Luna's artistic talent drew admiration from classmates, as the twins navigated their new environment with careful observation. "They're adjusting remarkably well," Dr. Walsh noted during her first follow-up visit. "You should be proud of how you've handled the transition." Julia was proud. She'd found her calling at 42, discovered that maternal instincts she'd thought were imaginary were actually finely tuned instruments for nurturing damaged souls back to wholeness. The children seemed to blossom under her attention. Marcus helped younger siblings with homework at the kitchen table each evening, his patient explanations revealing a teaching gift that made Julia consider educational opportunities for his future. Luna filled sketchbook after sketchbook with drawings that captured moments of their new life. Zara laughing at breakfast, Phoenix building elaborate Lego structures, Julia reading bedtime stories in the tower room. "You're getting really good at drawing families," Julia observed one evening, studying Luna's latest sketch of all 7 of them arranged around the fireplace. Luna's smile was radiant. "I never had a real family to practice on before." The twins established routines that spoke to their need for security. Kai would slip into Julia's home office each morning, supposedly to say goodbye before school, but actually conducting reconnaissance on her daily schedule, her passwords typed into her computer, the financial documents scattered across her desk. Phoenix's afternoon explosions of energy were carefully timed, always when Julia had important calls to make, always requiring her full attention just as she was settling into work. But Julia saw only children adapting to stability, working through trauma responses with patient love. When Phoenix accidentally broke her grandmother's vase during one of his energetic moments, she held him while he cried apologies, assuring him that accidents happened and people mattered more than things. River impressed her teachers with his technological sophistication, volunteering to help with the school's outdated computer systems. At home, he spent hours in his room with door closed, the soft clicking of keyboards and occasional phone calls explaining to Julia that he was helping classmates with their computer problems. She appreciated his helpful nature, unaware that he was systematically accessing her business email accounts, her banking information, her entire digital life. The house itself seemed to come alive with their presence. Lights stayed on later, filling rooms that had been dark for too long. Laughter echoed through hallways that had known only silence. Julia found herself humming while she cooked dinner, smiling at nothing, feeling complete in ways she'd never imagined possible. "Mom," Zara said one evening as Julia tucked her into the tower room bed, "are you happy we're here?" The word mom still made Julia's heart skip. "Happier than I've ever been, sweetheart." "Good," Zara whispered, cuddling Mr. Hopscotch closer. Because I never want to leave. Julia kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. You never have to leave. This is your home forever. As autumn deepened into winter, their routines solidified into traditions. Sunday brunches became elaborate affairs with everyone contributing something. Marcus organized weekly family meetings where issues could be discussed democratically. Luna decorated the mansion for holidays with artistic flair that transformed ordinary celebrations into magical experiences. Julia's business, which had demanded 16-hour days before, now operated smoothly with reduced hours as she prioritized family time. Her employees adapted to her new schedule, and clients respected her commitment to work-life balance. She'd never been more productive or more fulfilled. The children seemed to sense her happiness and reflected it back to her in countless small ways. Marcus leaving thank you notes on her pillow, Luna drawing portraits of Julia that made her look younger, more beautiful than mirrors suggested. The twins including her in their secret language, teaching her phrases that made her feel like an insider to their bond. River showing her fascinating computer programs he'd written, seeking her approval for his technical achievements. Zara's constant affection, climbing into Julia's lap during movie nights, requesting extra bedtime stories, calling her mom with increasing frequency. Winter settled over Maplewood Heights like a comfortable blanket, and Julia watched snow fall outside her kitchen window while preparing hot chocolate for 6 children who would soon come thundering through the door with tales of sledding and snowball fights. The mansion had never been warmer, fuller, more alive with the sound of family. Julia couldn't imagine how she'd lived without them, couldn't remember what had filled her days before Marcus's responsible guidance. Luna's artistic vision, the twins' infectious energy, River's brilliant mind, and Zara's pure love. She had no way of knowing that in bedrooms throughout her house, 6 children were documenting her every weakness, every vulnerability, every pathway into her heart that could be exploited when the time came to transform her greatest joy into her deepest nightmare. The first incident happened on a Tuesday morning in February. Julia reached for her wallet to pay for groceries and found $200 missing from the bills she'd carefully counted the night before. Her heart hammered as she searched her purse, retracing her steps, wondering if she'd somehow miscounted or forgotten a purchase. "Everything okay, Mom?" Marcus asked, appearing at her elbow with the protective concern that had become his trademark. "You look upset." "I'm missing some money," Julia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I thought I had more cash." Marcus's face clouded with what appeared to be genuine worry. "How much is missing?" When she told him, his expression shifted to carefully controlled anger. "That's serious. We need to have a family meeting tonight." The meeting felt like a tribunal. Julia sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by 6 faces displaying various degrees of shock, hurt, and indignation. Luna's eyes filled with tears before Julia even finished explaining what had happened. "You think one of us took it?" Luna whispered, her voice breaking. "After everything you've done for us?" "I'm not accusing anyone," Julia said quickly. "I just need to understand what happened." Phoenix erupted from his chair. "This is exactly what always happens. Something goes missing and everyone blames the foster kids." "Phoenix, calm down," Marcus said with the authority of someone used to managing crises. "Miss Johnson, Mom, isn't like the others. She's trying to figure this out, not throw us away." Kai sat silent and observant, while River's fingers moved across his tablet screen with mechanical precision. Zara clutched Mr. Hopscotch tighter, her lower lip trembling. "Maybe you just miscounted," River suggested quietly. "Adults make mistakes with money all the time. My foster dad before you was always losing track of his wallet." Julia wanted to believe him. She'd been tired lately, working long hours to make up for reduced schedule. Maybe she had miscounted. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. "You're probably right," she said finally. "I'm sorry for upsetting everyone." But the incidents continued. Eleanor's pearl necklace disappeared from Julia's jewelry box. Phoenix had a spectacular meltdown when questioned, throwing himself on the floor and screaming that nobody trusted him, that he wanted to go back to the group home where at least people were honest about not wanting him. Julia found herself comforting him, promising that families worked through problems together. that she would never send him away. In the chaos of his tears and her reassurances, nobody noticed Kai slip the necklace back into a different drawer, where Julia would find it a week later and blame her own forgetfulness. Strange charges appeared on her credit cards. Small amounts from online vendors, River explained, were probably, quote, subscription services that auto-renew. Her computer began running slowly, files occasionally disappearing, then reappearing in different folders. Technology is weird sometimes, River said helpfully when she mentioned the glitches. I could look at it for you if you want. Each incident chipped away at Julia's confidence, making her question her memory, her judgment, her ability to manage a household. The children rallied around her confusion with touching concern, offering explanations that made sense, comfort that felt genuine. She had no idea she was being systematically broken down by experts who'd learned to weaponize the very love she offered them. Julia stared at her phone for 10 minutes before finally dialing Michael's number. 5 months of avoided calls, ignored voicemails, and deflected concern had led to this moment. Her hand trembling as she pressed the contact that read, Michael, brother, with an accuracy that felt like accusation. Julia? His voice carried surprise, mixed with relief. Jesus, I was starting to think something had happened to you. I'm fine, she said automatically, then caught herself. Actually, no, I'm not fine. I need to talk to someone, and you're the only person I trust who doesn't live in this house. Michael's pause stretched long enough for Julia to hear papers rustling in the background, the sounds of his law office winding down for the evening. I can be there in an hour. You don't have to. Julia, I'm coming. She spent the next hour in a cleaning frenzy that would have impressed Eleanor, scrubbing surfaces that were already spotless, rearranging flowers that didn't need arranging. The children noticed her nervous energy with the acute awareness they'd developed for her moods. Everything okay, Mom? Marcus asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway with the timing that had become his specialty. You seem stressed. My brother is coming for dinner, Julia said, surprised by how foreign the words felt. I haven't seen him since the funeral. Marcus's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something calculating behind his concerned facade. That's great. We'd love to meet him. Should we dress up? Make a good impression. Just be yourselves, Julia replied, missing the shared glance between Marcus and Kai, who'd materialized silently near the pantry. By the time Michael's BMW pulled into the circular drive, the children had arranged themselves in the living room like a Norman Rockwell painting. Marcus sat reading at the antique desk, helping Zara with homework that looked suspiciously advanced for a 10-year-old. Luna sketched quietly in the window seat, afternoon light catching her hair in a way that made her appear ethereally innocent. The twins played chess with the concentrated silence of master strategists, while River sat cross-legged on the rug, surrounded by computer components he was apparently repairing. Michael rang the doorbell despite Julia's invitation to walk in, a formality that felt like the emotional distance they'd maintained since childhood. When she opened the door, his familiar face carried the sharp assessment she remembered from courtrooms, where he dissected witnesses with surgical precision. You look tired, he said without preamble, though his expression softened as he took in her appearance. Thinner. Are you eating? 6 kids keep me busy, Julia replied, leading him toward the living room. Kids, I'd like you to meet my brother, Michael. The performance that followed was flawless. Marcus rose immediately, extending his hand with the confident grip of someone raised on good manners. Mr. Johnson, it's an honor to meet you. Julia talks about you constantly. Michael's eyebrows rose slightly at the easy familiarity of Julia, rather than a more formal address, but he shook the boy's hand with professional courtesy. She talks about all of you, too. Luna glanced up from her sketchbook with shy prettiness, offering a small wave before returning to her drawing with the perfect balance of politeness and artistic absorption. The twins looked up from their chess game with coordinated smiles that managed to be both respectful and slightly mischievous, the kind of expression that suggested good kids who occasionally got into harmless trouble. River rose from his technological puzzle, approaching Michael with the careful movements of someone who understood the importance of first impressions. Are you really a lawyer? Marcus said you help people who are falsely accused of crimes. Sometimes, Michael replied, his trained eye noting the boy's sophisticated vocabulary, the way he maintained eye contact just long enough to show respect without seeming aggressive. Zara bounced over with Mr. Hopscotch tucked under her arm, her natural exuberance providing the perfect counterpoint to her siblings' more measured responses. "Julia says you're really smart, and that you help people when they're in trouble. Do you like being a lawyer?" "Most days," Michael said, and Julia caught something in his expression, a subtle tension that suggested his professional instincts were registering details she couldn't identify. Dinner unfolded with choreographed perfection. The children took turns asking Michael thoughtful questions about his work, his travels, his memories of growing up with Julia. Their interest appeared genuine, their manners impeccable, their affection for Julia evident in countless small gestures. Marcus ensuring her water glass stayed filled, Luna complimenting the meal preparation, Phoenix jumping up to clear plates before being asked. "You've done an incredible job with them," Michael said during a brief moment when the children had excused themselves to prepare what Zara announced would be, quote, "a special dessert surprise." Julia felt warmth spread through her chest. "They're amazing kids. A little challenging sometimes, but nothing I can't handle." "Challenging how?" Michael's question carried the casual tone he used when leading witnesses toward revelations they didn't realize they were making. Julia found herself describing the missing money, the lost jewelry, the computer glitches that River had been so helpful in explaining. As she spoke, she watched Michael's expression shift subtly, his lawyer instincts clearly processing information in ways that made her suddenly self-conscious. "These incidents," he said carefully, "they all have reasonable explanations?" "Of course," Julia replied, though something in his tone made her defensive. "You don't understand what these children have been through, Michael. They need patience, not suspicion." Before Michael could respond, Luna appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears that seemed to have materialized from nowhere. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she whispered, her voice breaking with what sounded like genuine distress. "But I heard what you were talking about, and I have to say something." She moved toward Michael with the fragile grace of someone approaching a dangerous animal, her enormous eyes filled with pain that made Julia's protective instincts surge immediately. "It hurts so much when people don't trust us," Luna continued, her voice barely audible. "We've been accused of so many things by people who were supposed to love us. When Julia took us in, she promised we were safe here. That this was different." Michael's expression remained carefully neutral, but Julia could see him struggling with the girl's apparent anguish, her obvious distress at being perceived as a threat. "I didn't mean to suggest," he began, but Luna interrupted with a sob that seemed to come from somewhere deep and wounded. "You think we're stealing from her, don't you? You think we're bad kids who don't deserve a family?" "Luna, honey," Julia said, moving toward the girl with automatic maternal response. "Uncle Michael doesn't think that. We were just talking." But the damage was done. Phoenix appeared in the doorway, his face flushed with indignation that seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. "Are you trying to split up our family? Because that's what always happens. Adults come around asking questions, and then suddenly we're packing our bags again." "Nobody's packing anything," Julia said firmly, shooting Michael a look that clearly indicated the conversation was over. "This is your home. Forever." Michael left an hour later, his goodbyes stiff with unspoken concerns that Julia chose not to acknowledge. As his car disappeared down the drive, she felt the familiar comfort of her children rallying around her, offering the unconditional love that Michael's suspicious nature couldn't understand. She had no idea that upstairs, 6 children were conducting a debriefing session, analyzing every word Michael had spoken, every expression that had crossed his face, already planning the next phase of their campaign to ensure he never got close enough to expose the truth. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, marked urgent from Julia's biggest client. Her hands shook as she read the message terminating their contract, citing inappropriate communications and unprofessional conduct that made continued partnership impossible. "That's impossible," Julia whispered to her empty office, scrolling through her sent folder. There it was, an email she'd never written, sent from her account at 3 a.m., containing rambling accusations about the client's business practices and veiled threats about exposing their secrets. "River," she called, her voice carrying through the mansion. "Can you come help me with something?" He appeared within minutes, his 11-year-old face creased with concern as he studied her computer screen. "That's really weird, Mom. Maybe your account got hacked? I could run some security scans. Julia watched him work, his fingers flying across the keyboard with expertise that still amazed her. There, he said finally. I found traces of malware. Someone definitely accessed your system remotely. I've cleaned it up and changed your passwords. Thank you, sweetheart, Julia said, relief flooding through her. What would I do without you? River's smile held just the right amount of pride and bashfulness. That's what families do, right? Take care of each other? But the incidents escalated. Julia's prescription anxiety medication, a mild dose she'd taken since her parents' death, began affecting her strangely. Some mornings, she felt foggy and disoriented, unable to remember conversations from the night before. Other times, she felt hyper-aware, paranoid, jumping at shadows that seemed to move in her peripheral vision. You've been working too hard, Marcus observed during one of her difficult mornings, his voice carrying the authority of someone older than 16. Maybe you should stay home from the office today. Let us take care of you. Julia found herself agreeing more often than not. The children rallied around her with touching devotion, Luna bringing her tea with honey, Zara curling up beside her during afternoon rests, Phoenix actually sitting still while she recovered from her episodes. Their care felt genuine, necessary, the only stable thing in a world that seemed increasingly unpredictable. Her business began hemorrhaging clients. Meetings she thought she'd scheduled never appeared on her calendar. Important emails disappeared from her inbox, only to resurface weeks later marked as read. Phone calls ended abruptly when her system malfunctioned, leaving potential clients frustrated and suspicious. Technology is so unreliable, River said helpfully when she mentioned another digital disaster. Maybe you need a new system. I could help you pick something out. The children became increasingly protective of her deteriorating health. Marcus screened her calls, explaining gently that certain conversations seemed to trigger her anxiety. The twins monitored her medication schedule with the diligence of nurses, ensuring she never missed a dose that seemed to help her confusion but somehow made everything else worse. We're worried about you, Luna said one evening, her artistic fingers tracing patterns on Julia's arm with soothing repetition. You seem so stressed lately. Maybe you shouldn't be working so much. Julia's world contracted steadily. Friends stopped calling after conversations where she apparently said things she couldn't remember. Her cleaning lady quit after finding the house in states of disarray that Julia had no memory of creating. Neighbors grew distant after incidents the children delicately described as Mom having one of her bad days. The important thing is that we're here for you, Marcus said during a family meeting where they discussed Julia's condition with the solemnity of medical professionals. We know what it's like when adults can't take care of themselves. We've learned how to help. Dr. Walsh's scheduled visits became sources of humiliation as Julia struggled to appear competent, while her children displayed the mature concern of caregivers managing a declining patient. The role reversal felt natural by then. These children had survived worse situations and emerged stronger, more capable than the adults who'd failed them. Maybe it's time to consider letting us help more, River suggested after a particularly difficult episode where Julia had apparently locked herself out of the house and couldn't remember why she'd been outside in her nightgown. We could handle more responsibilities, give you time to rest. Julia agreed, grateful for their willingness to shoulder burdens she felt increasingly unable to carry. She had no idea that every episode, every memory lapse, every moment of confusion had been carefully orchestrated by 6 children, who'd learned that the quickest way to control an adult was to convince them they needed saving. By winter's end, Julia had become a prisoner in her own home, completely dependent on the children she'd adopted to save. Dr. Walsh arrived unannounced on a Thursday afternoon, her clipboard clutched against her chest-like armor as she rang the doorbell of the Victorian mansion. Through the leaded glass windows, she could see movement inside, children gathering in the foyer with the quick efficiency of a well-rehearsed emergency drill. Marcus opened the door, his 16-year-old face grave with concern that seemed far too mature for his age. Dr. Walsh, thank goodness you're here. We've been so worried about Mom. The title felt wrong somehow, though Amanda couldn't pinpoint why. In her 15 years of child services, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And something about the boy's perfectly modulated worry triggered alarms she couldn't ignore. Is Julia available? She asked. stepping into the foyer that felt strangely cold despite the expensive heating system. "She's resting upstairs," Luna said softly, appearing at Marcus's elbow like a wraith. "She had another bad episode this morning. We've been taking turns sitting with her." Amanda studied the girl's ethereal features, noting the dark circles under her eyes that suggested genuine exhaustion. "What kind of episode?" "She forgot where she was again," River explained, emerging from what appeared to be a home office, his 11-year-old hands holding printouts with the professionalism of a medical technician. "We found her trying to leave the house at 4 a.m., saying she was late for a meeting that doesn't exist. Look." He handed Amanda computer printouts showing Julia's recent online activity, rambling posts on social media, aggressive emails to former clients, search histories that suggested growing paranoia and confusion. The evidence painted a picture of someone spiraling into mental illness. "She keeps forgetting to eat," Zara added, her 10-year-old voice breaking with what sounded like genuine distress. "Phoenix and I have been bringing her meals, but sometimes she doesn't remember us bringing them." Amanda followed the children up the curved staircase, noting how they moved as a unit, their concern coordinated in ways that spoke to experience managing adult dysfunction. The twins flanked her on either side, their 12-year-old faces matching masks of worry. "We're trying our best," Kai said quietly, "but we're just kids. We don't know how to help someone who's getting sick like this." Julia's bedroom door stood slightly ajar, revealing a figure hunched in a wingback chair by the window. Amanda knocked gently before entering, and what she saw made her heart sink with professional disappointment mixed with genuine concern. The woman who'd impressed her with composure and determination a year ago looked like a shadow of herself. Julia's business suits had been replaced by stained pajamas, her carefully styled hair hung lank and unwashed, and her eyes held the unfocused quality of someone heavily medicated. "Dr. Walsh?" Julia's voice slurred slightly, her movements sluggish as she attempted to rise from her chair. "I wasn't expecting. Did we have an appointment? I think I forgot again." "This is just a routine check-in, Julia. How are you feeling?" "Tired," Julia replied, sinking back into her chair with visible relief. "So tired all the time." "The children have been wonderful, though, taking care of everything. I don't know what I'd do without them." Amanda's trained eye cataloged the prescription bottles on Julia's nightstand: anxiety medication, sleep aids, medications for conditions she couldn't readily identify. "Are you working with a doctor for all of these prescriptions?" "Marcus handles all that," Julia said vaguely, gesturing toward the boy who'd positioned himself protectively near her chair. "He's so responsible. Keeps track of everything I'm supposed to take and when." Marcus stepped forward with the measured confidence of someone used to managing crises. "We've been worried about her memory issues, Dr. Walsh. She forgets appointments, takes double doses of medication, gets confused about what day it is. Dr. Morrison at Maplewood Medical has been helping us adjust her prescriptions." Amanda made notes while studying the dynamic in the room. The children surrounded Julia with protective attention that felt both touching and somehow wrong. Their concern appeared genuine, but there was an organizational quality to their care that troubled her professional instincts. "Julia, can you tell me about your daily routine?" Amanda asked. Julia's attempt to answer revealed the extent of her deterioration. She couldn't remember what she'd eaten for breakfast, couldn't recall the last time she'd left the house, struggled to explain how she spent her days beyond resting and letting the children handle things. "She tried to drive to her old office last week," Luna added helpfully, "but she got lost 3 blocks from home. Phoenix had to call us to come find her." "I was so scared," Phoenix said, his 12-year-old voice breaking with emotion. She didn't recognize the street she's lived on for over a year. Amanda spent another hour documenting what appeared to be a complete role reversal. The children had become caregivers to an adult who could barely function independently. They spoke about Julia's condition with the clinical detachment of medical professionals, describing symptoms and managing medications with expertise that seemed far beyond their years. "We love her so much," Zara whispered as Amanda prepared to leave, "but we're scared she's getting worse. What if something happens to her? What happens to us then?" Driving away from the mansion, Amanda felt the familiar weight of a case gone wrong. Another well-intentioned adoption failing. Because love wasn't enough to overcome the reality of adult dysfunction. The children's devotion to their declining adoptive mother was heartbreaking and admirable. She had no way of knowing that as her car disappeared down the tree-lined street, 6 children were celebrating the success of their most sophisticated performance yet. The complete psychological destruction of the woman who'd tried to save them. The Victorian mansion erupted into chaos at 2:17 a.m. when Marcus discovered Zara's empty bed and Julia's missing laptop. His shout of rage echoed through the house, summoning the other children like soldiers responding to battle stations. Julia pressed herself against the locked door of Eleanor's old pantry, clutching Zara and the evidence they'd spent hours gathering. Bank statements showing systematic theft, screenshots of River's hacking programs, video recordings Zara had secretly made of the children's strategy sessions. Her cell phone remained dead in her hands, its battery mysteriously drained despite being fully charged hours earlier. "She can't have gone far?" Luna's voice drifted through the walls, no longer sweet and vulnerable but sharp with predatory calculation. "River, did you disable the landlines?" "Cut the main connection an hour ago," came the cold reply. "Internet's down too. We're completely isolated." Zara whimpered against Julia's shoulder, her 10-year-old body shaking with terror. "They're going to hurt us," she whispered. Marcus said anyone who betrays the family disappears forever. Julia's mind raced through the mansion's layout, searching for escape routes that 6 children who'd spent months mapping every corner wouldn't anticipate. Eleanor's house held secrets that predated their arrival, hidden passages built during Prohibition, servant stairs that connected floors without using main hallways. "There's a dumbwaiter in the kitchen wall," Julia breathed into Zara's ear. "It connects to the 3rd floor. Can you be very quiet?" The child nodded, clutching Mr. Hopscotch with desperate determination. Together, they crept through the pantry's rear exit, moving through Eleanor's butler's passage toward the kitchen. Behind them, Julia could hear the children conducting a systematic search, their coordination terrifyingly efficient. "Phoenix, check the basement," Marcus commanded, his 16-year-old voice carrying absolute authority. "Kai, monitor the perimeter. Luna, search the 2nd floor. River, keep trying to track her phone's GPS signature." "She can't call for help without communications," River replied with clinical satisfaction. "But if she tries to leave the property, the motion sensors will trigger." Julia reached the kitchen as footsteps thundered overhead, her hands trembling as she located the hidden dumbwaiter panel behind Eleanor's spice cabinet. The antique mechanism groaned softly as she lifted Zara into the narrow space. "Go up to grandmother's sewing room," Julia whispered urgently. "Hide under the window seat until morning. If something happens to me, break the window and scream for the neighbors." "What about you?" Zara's eyes were wide with terror. "I'm going to end this." Julia had spent her entire adult life reading people, understanding their motivations, predicting their next moves. She'd built a marketing empire by recognizing human nature's patterns and exploiting them. These children had turned her own compassion against her, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the woman who'd clawed her way from an emotionally barren childhood to professional success. She emerged from the kitchen to find Marcus waiting in the foyer, his teenage frame silhouetted against the stained glass windows like a gothic nightmare. Luna flanked him to the left, her ethereal beauty transformed into something predatory and cold. The twins appeared from opposite hallways, moving with synchronized precision, while River descended the main staircase, with the calculated steps of someone who'd anticipated this moment. "Where's Zara?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying the quiet menace of someone who'd learned that violence was sometimes necessary for survival. "Safe," Julia replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice, "along with evidence of everything you've done. Bank records, medical documentation, digital forensics that prove systematic fraud and abuse." River's composure cracked slightly. "Those files are encrypted, password protected. You couldn't have." "Your passwords are pathetic," Julia said, echoing his own words back to him. "Zara's been documenting your methods for months." including your arrogance about adult incompetence." Marcus's expression shifted, revealing the calculating predator beneath the protective son facade. "You think you understand what you're dealing with, but you don't. We've survived things that would have broken you years ago. We know how to make people disappear." "Your children," Julia said firmly, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming danger. "Damaged, brilliant, dangerous children. But still children. And I'm the adult here." Phoenix exploded into motion, lunging toward her with the chaotic energy that had once seemed like boyish exuberance but now revealed itself as pure destructive force. Julia sidestepped, her business instincts translating into physical awareness she hadn't known she possessed. The mansion's silence shattered as Kai grabbed for the evidence bag, while Luna produced a syringe filled with clear liquid that Julia realized with horror must be the medication they'd been using to keep her compliant. "You should have stayed broken," Luna hissed, her beautiful face twisted with hatred. "We were taking such good care of you." Outside, the first sirens began to wail in the distance. Whether coincidence or the neighbors finally hearing something they couldn't ignore, Julia couldn't tell. But the children heard them too, their perfect coordination fracturing as survival instincts overrode group loyalty. The battle for Julia's life, her sanity, and her home had only just begun. The flashing red and blue lights painted the Victorian mansion in colors of judgment as police cars filled the circular drive. Detective Sarah Chen emerged from the lead vehicle, her experienced eyes taking in the scene: broken windows, overturned furniture visible through the foyer, and 6 children arranged on the front porch with the perfect tableau of traumatized innocence. "She attacked us," Luna sobbed into Officer Martinez's shoulder, her performance flawless even as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "We tried to help her, but she's been getting worse for months. Ask Dr. Walsh. She'll tell you." Julia sat in the back of an ambulance, Zara clinging to her side while paramedics treated cuts from the mansion's shattered chandelier. The evidence bag containing Zara's journal and financial records sat protected in Detective Chen's custody, its contents already revealing a pattern of systematic fraud that painted a very different picture than the children's tearful accusations. "The medical examiner found traces of benzodiazepine compounds in your blood," Detective Chen said quietly, crouching beside the ambulance. "Levels consistent with long-term drugging. Your prescription bottles contained double the documented dosages." Michael arrived as the children were being separated into different vehicles, his lawyer instincts immediately cataloging the scene. Behind him came Dr. Walsh, her face pale with the realization of how completely she'd been manipulated. "I should have seen it," Walsh said, reviewing Zara's journal with trembling hands. "The coordination, the perfectly timed emotional responses. They've been running this operation since before they met you." River remained silent as digital forensics experts examined his computer setup, finding evidence of identity theft, financial fraud, and electronic stalking that spanned multiple foster placements. Marcus maintained his mask of wounded authority, even as investigators uncovered his detailed plans to have Julia declared incompetent and gain legal guardianship of her estate. The twins broke first under separate interrogation, their coordinated responses falling apart when they couldn't communicate. Phoenix's confession tumbled out in a torrent of guilt and fear, while Kai's clinical recitation of their methods revealed the depth of their calculated cruelty. Luna's final performance crumbled when confronted with video evidence of her practicing tears and rehearsing emotional breakdowns. The ethereal child dissolved into something desperate and feral, her beauty unable to mask the predator she'd become. Only Zara escaped the system's judgment, her cooperation and genuine remorse earning her placement with a carefully vetted family that specialized in helping children recover from trauma. Julia insisted on maintaining contact, their bond forged in survival stronger than the manipulation that had nearly destroyed them both. "Will they ever be normal?" Julia asked Dr. Walsh during one of their final meetings, 6 months after the arrests. Walsh considered the question carefully. "Marcus and Luna have antisocial personality disorders that may be permanent. River's detachment suggests deep trauma that could be treatable with intensive therapy. The twins might recover if separated and given individual treatment. But some damage She trailed off. Julia nodded, understanding. She'd learned the hardest lesson of her life. That love, no matter how genuine, couldn't heal wounds that had transformed children into predators. Some families couldn't be saved, only survived. Standing in Eleanor's empty mansion, Julia felt peace for the first time in 2 years. The house would be sold, the money donated to legitimate child welfare organizations. She'd rebuild her business and her life, armed with wisdom that had cost her everything, but taught her the difference between helping and enabling. Sometimes the greatest act of love was knowing when to walk away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.